Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lisa Bussinger here. I am going to host today our webinar on the 5 key areas of retirement planning. This webinar, typically when I do it live, lasts about 50 minutes. Because we are doing it in a webinar format, we may go over maybe an hour or so. I will not be able to answer any questions via the chat, but feel free to go ahead and type anything in there. We will get to them personally at the end one-on-one. The only reason why we can't do that today is because there's a lot of people on, and it would just not be able to let us finish the seminar here. So as we get started, I want to introduce myself. Lisa Bussinger. I'm owner, president, and founder of Bussinger Financial Group. We are located in Barrington, Illinois. We've been doing financial planning actually now over 22 years. You may see 20 years here on your screen, helping individual families plan for retirement. I am duly licensed. I have my Series 65 license, and I also have my insurance license. What does that mean? My Series 65 license means that I can go out to the investment world and get any type of investment vehicle we need to. And we use institutional money managers for that. And then I have my insurance license that allows us and gives us opportunity to protect people in all sorts of areas of their financial planning. I'm also educated by Ed Slott and Company. I've been educated by him for over 10 years. He is the foremost guru on IRA advice and life insurance planning. So thank you for joining here today. Before I get into the actual meat and potatoes of this seminar, and how I want to educate you on what we've been doing for so long for families, is I want to tell you why I do what I do and why I have been doing this for 20 years. See, when I was 26 years old, my father was just 60 years old, and he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. My mom was 2 years younger. She was 58 at the time, raised 5 kids, never had a job, never had a career, never needed to. My dad had his own construction company and never was sick a day in his life. So he thought he'd work forever. So you can imagine when my family was told that my father had early Alzheimer's disease at the age of 60. He no longer could work, drive a car, run his business. Being that my mom was 2 years younger and he was only 60, they had no income. My mom went and worked for Jewel Food Stores, baking bread at 2 in the morning so they could have some sort of benefits and an income. They lost their home. And the last 7 years of my father's life, he spent in a nursing home. So he was in the nursing home for about 10 months. As that disease progressed, I was the one daughter that actually was here helping my mom and dad going through that process. And what I learned was they had no plan. They never thought anything like this would happen to them. They had no plan for something like this to happen to them. And I got very educated very quickly and started meeting people and understanding what they could have maybe done different. So what I did, after my father passed away, there is one thing that he did have, and that was a life insurance policy. When he passed away, that life insurance policy paid out to my mother, tax-free, and she was able to go rebuy a home and live independently. If he did not have that, my mother would have lived with one of us 5 kids. So she was able to keep her independence because of that. So what I did was I started talking to people. I went out and got my license, and I started in-home appointments, meeting people one by one, family by family, helping them understand the risks that they had, things that were outside of their control. So fast forward 22 years, and here we are in an economic whirlwind of strangeness going on right now, and educating you guys, not live, but through a webinar like this. So with that, I want to share with you a few current things that are going on in our financial world that has come about because of this coronavirus that you need to be aware of. One of the things is taxes. The tax filings are delayed this year until July 15th, 2020. You know, prior to that, they had to be done by April 15th. If you owe taxes, that tax payment can also be delayed until July 15th, 2020. Contributions to your IRAs for 2019, those had to be made by April 15th of the following year. So this year you were able to extend those contributions to July 15th of this year, giving you a couple extra months to set aside that money for your IRAs. In 2020, those contributions can be funded all the way up until April 15th of 2021. So that has not changed as of yet. Withdrawals from IRAs, there's been a little bit of a freelance here where if you are under the age of 59 and a half, there will not be a 10% IRS penalty for 2020 if you have to tap into IRA funds earlier. Prior to the COVID-19 change, there was a 10% penalty if you took out from your tax-deferred IRA or 401k accounts prior to being 59 and a half. They are waiving that IRS penalty this year. Required minimum distributions are from deferred tax-deferred accounts such as IRAs and 401ks. That this year, if you are 72, you have to take an RMD. So any of you that have been over 70 and a half, you are not required to take RMDs in 2020. They're holding off on that. And the rollover rule. If you were to take money out of an IRA, you had 60 days to get it back into the IRA to avoid paying any taxes. They have extended that rule to 3 years. So as long as you your withdrawal is put back into your IRA in 3 years, no taxes will be owed on your withdrawal. The maximum withdrawal is $100,000. So you can't take all your money out of the IRA and get it back in there in 3 years. It's the maximum on that of $100,000. Those are some key pieces of information that you all should know just as we move forward. Now, getting into the actual areas of retirement planning, there are 5 areas. The first one I want to talk to you a little bit about is how yesterday, if you were to retire, versus what it looks like today. When I say yesterday, I'm talking maybe about your parents. They didn't have as much worry as we do today, and there's a few reasons for that. A lot of people worked for the same employer for 30 years. Sorry, my key isn't working there. Whoop. They earned a pension through employers' contributions, earned Social Security, saved additional money to supplemental pensions and Social Security. But today it's very different. People are working for multiple employers, entitled to little or no pension. Now, when I'm holding a live seminar on this, I usually ask for a raise of hand who in the room has a pension or will have a pension. The reason why I ask that is pensions are going to the wayside. Many companies are offering you a lump sum because they don't want to take on the risk to continue on with, promising you that paycheck for the rest of your life. So companies are not offering pensions anymore. So what's happened in turn is you still get Social Security. We're still putting in Social Security. You're still going to get a Social Security paycheck. You can't rely on the company to do that. Years ago, when you retired, you would get a golden watch and you would get your pension paycheck. Today, we're lucky if we actually even get a cake at the end of our retirement. So very different. And then you saved some money on your own, maybe not inside your 401k or IRA accounts. We call that after-tax money. So that's why it's very different. When you're working, we call those your accumulation years. So you're able to just set aside money. Maybe if you're real due diligent, you can set it aside monthly, and that just keeps accumulating and it invests. Where it becomes tricky is when you become into the retirement years and you have to start using that money to live off of. The key there is you're going to have to invest differently in your retirement than you did when you were working. So I want to go through some concepts here. One of the main things is I want to show you where the income actually was coming in. The bulk of the income during retirement came from pensions, and then Social Security, and then whatever you saved outside of that. Now it's totally flipped. The smallest source of income coming into households is pensions, then Social Security, and then your nest egg. So really what that is showing is the money that you've worked so hard for to save all of your working years, that's the money you need to rely on when you start drawing for retirement so you can have the lifestyle that you want. So if I look at investment, that's our very first topic in planning the 5 key areas. So I want to share with you something that we all are familiar with, 2 words, consistency versus volatility. Consistency, and I can't ask for a show of hands here, but I want you to think about this. If you could receive a 20% average rate of return or an 8% average rate of return, think about which one you would prefer. Now I can know because I've been working on this and doing the math for years, most of you might think by looking at those numbers that you'd want a 20% average rate of return versus an 8? Because it sounds like you would have more money, right? Well, let's actually do the math. And let's say this shows you how it can be quite complicated. So let's say you start out with $100,000 in year one, but in that very first year you lose 50%. So your $100,000 is now $50,000. Yes, we know that we can lose 50% with outside of our control invested in the market, right? In year two, let's say the market soars like we're back in the 90s again and you get a 90% rate of return. Your $50,000 now captures 90%. Congratulations, you have $95,000. If we take those two returns, the negative 50 plus the positive 90, and we divide that by 2, your average rate of return is 20%. But you're still down $5,000 from your initial investment, although your average rate of return may look fairly nice. Now if we look at an 8% average rate of return, let's say we started with the same $100,000, but in the first year, instead of seeing that negative 50%, we just see a modest positive 2%. So you have $100,000 plus 2%, you now have $102,000. And in year two, instead of seeing that whopping 90% growth, you just see a 14% return. So your $102,000 is now $116,000. We take those two numbers, the positive 2 plus the positive 14, we divide that by 2, your average rate of return is 8%. So which would you rather have now by looking at those numbers? See, here's where your investment advisor may be telling you, don't worry about it, you're averaging 20%. And you're going, if I'm averaging 20%, how am I still down? It's just math, and it's the way the returns come in. So I just wanted to share with you that it's consistency in your returns and mitigating some of that volatility, which will have you have a happier, more successful retirement. Let's take a look at the S&P 500. This is as of the close of, I think it was last Friday that I ran these numbers. So I wanted you to take a look at, I'm going to go back through July of 2015 to current April of 2020. So let's say you start out with $500,000 and that's your initial investment back on April 10th of 2015. The S&P was actually at 2,102. Now we know we've had some volatile times during this last 5 years, but we are still higher than when we started. So let's take a look at the numbers. So in the very first year, if we look at, we call this point to point, the S&P was 2,100 and it dropped down to 2,047, you would have lost 2.62% of your investment in that 1 year period. So your 500,000 is now down to 486,917. But now in 2017, we saw a gain. The S&P went from 2,000 to 2,355. So now we are up 12% from our initial starting point. So now we have 560,180. That was a good year. 2017 to 2018, the S&P jumped to 2604. That was a 23% gain from our starting point. So now we have $619,410 in our account. And then in 2019, we know that was a big year, big gain year. We are up 37.58% from our starting point, $687,916. If we go to 2020, right now, our total return from when we started is only 20%. So we're down 17% from our initial starting point. But the S&P 500 is still 2,526. So the reason why I wanted to bring this chart up is because a lot of people are in the mindset, which is, I'm not telling you you're wrong or right, but sell high, buy low. People are thinking because the market has gone down this last month that they would be getting out at the wrong time if they were starting to, shift their mindset and be more consistent with their returns. You are still high. You are still up 20% from your starting point. So I want you not to think about selling low at this point. If you wanted to make some adjustments in your portfolio, you would still be selling high. These gains in the last 5 years, the stock market has given you. And if you contributed to it, then you might even have more. So that's something that I just wanted to share with you. That's just math. So don't be too worried if you want to make some adjustments that you would be selling low, because the market overall is still high from 5 years ago. So when we talk about diversification, this is where we are specialists at. We help people retire and we help with true diversification. I give this story because back in 2010, I acquired a client who came into my office with a stack full of papers, and he came in and he told me, Lisa, I've lost half of my life savings twice and I can't do it again, but they tell me I'm diversified. So what we did is we looked at his accounts and we found out he was diversified. He was diversified all in one sector. So now I want to break down the sectors for you. We like to split them in half. There's a protected side and there's a risk side. On the protected side, there's only so many places we can go. You can go to banks or credit unions. Therefore, you can sit in cash, which is your checking savings. Maybe you get a certificate of deposit, maybe today 2.5%, maybe 1%, depending on the length of term. Or you can go to insurance companies. Insurance companies are there to protect your home, auto, cars. They're also there to protect your assets, your income, and your life. So you can use annuities or you can use cash value life insurance. Those are the only places that you can go to today to make sure your assets are protected from the stock market. On the risk world, very traditional investments such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, etc. Or more alternatives. These are a little bit more risky, such things as real estate investment trust, other known as a REIT, oil and natural gas, MLPs, currencies, commodities, options. These are on the risk side. They may just be a little riskier than your traditional stock. So the hard part for you guys is to decide, how do I blend my portfolio protected versus risk? And that's what we do every single day for our clients. The key is knowing how much risk can you withstand, how much income do you need. So there's a lot of pieces that goes into it as far as diversification. One of the things I want to share with you, as I mentioned in the protected world, banks or insurance companies, there's good, bad, and ugly in everything, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But what I want to show you real quick is a chart that I think gives you a really good visual on protected versus risk sectors, investment opportunities. So if we take a look here, the red line is the S&P 500. Goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. This is what a lot of you have the only option in your 401k, for example, or if you're working with a broker, that's all they can do for you. The blue line is something like a 3% earning CD. It's safe and steady. You don't see the ups, the downs. The green line is something that we use in our office as a fixed index annuity. You capture the upside, but when the markets are going down, you get a zero. That's why we call it a protected asset. I know there's a lot of numbers on this chart, and again, this is not something that you need to study or worry about. It's just visually giving you an idea that there's diversification out there amongst different classes of investments. Not everything has to be in the risk sector. So what I want to do is go through all the asset classes. Now remember, because we are fiduciaries, we can go out to the world and we can do any investment that our client needs. So let's look at stocks. The main purpose for a stock is to capture growth, right? We hope that we get growth in our stocks. That's the main purpose why we own them. They can produce income as well because we have stocks that can break. You can own stocks that pay some dividends. Are they liquid? Absolutely. You can sell them in a day, anytime you want. You can say sell that stock and it's liquid. You can turn it into cash. They can be tax advantaged because you can do some tax harvesting on gains and losses and possibly not pay any tax, even avoid capital gains tax. It depends on the stocks you own, if they're a winner or a loser. So they can be possibly tax advantaged, but there is no protection to them. They can go up and down like we've all seen what's been going on this last month. Bonds. Bonds are generally more on the safer side of the risk world, but they're there to give you a little bit of more balance and not everything to be as risky as a stock, and they can produce income. They can promise a yield to you, if you will. Are they liquid? They should be able to be liquid. We use bonds that are liquid, meaning if you decide you want to get out, you can sell them. You could take some loss if they were a long-term duration bond, but they can be liquid. Tax advantaged if they're a municipal bond, which we have a nice municipal bond portfolio to generate some tax-free income federally. You'd have to be state tax-free if you owned a bond in the state you live in. So right now we're not buying Illinois bonds as I'm recording this in Illinois, but bonds can be federally tax-free. So it's a nice income source that can be exempt federally. Protection, they can't be protected from the downside depending on the bond that we use, but they're not really positioned for growth. Real estate. Real estate, we hope to get growth when we purchase property. It can create income, such as rental income. Is it tax advantaged? It can be, depending on the way you set it up, if it can be held into a trust or charitable remainder trust. If you have rental property, that might be some things that you might need to look at as far as being more tax advantaged, or if you want to sell it, there's ways to do that with real estate and using the right type of trusts. Is it liquid? No. You know you have to sell it in order to get the liquidity out of it, and it's not protected. As we know, in 2008, the real estate market really had some rough times, so our values really dropped. Annuities, yes, if you use the right ones, they are positioned for growth and income. That's their main purpose, is to provide a guaranteed lifetime income for you. Tax advantaged can be because they are tax deferred until you decide to put the money in your pocket and take an income stream. Then it's only taxed on the amount of money you take out. So they are tax advantaged, and they will protect, meaning you can never lose annuity money based on the markets. So, and are they liquid? They're liquid to a point. There's some restrictions, maybe only up to 10% of the annuity's value each and every year. If you go over that, there could be a small fee to make them more liquid. So we like to say they're not your liquid asset, even though they have liquidity options to them. CDs, they are protected against the stock market. You know exactly what you're going to get when you open that CD, what the interest rate is going to be. Are they positioned for growth? No, it's more of a stable, steady account. They don't provide income, and they're not liquid. You have to cash in the CD, and sometimes there's a penalty to do that. And they're not tax advantaged at all, because the interest that you earn in the year you make that on the CD, you have to pay tax on any interest that you earn. So what you can see is this is a true diversified portfolio. So nothing in this portfolio is perfect. It's a tool to use to get an end result. And that's how you have to think of when you start building a retirement plan. What tools do you need to make sure that you have the retirement and the results that you want? So that's the section of diversification and the overall general concepts of investments and how we do our planning conceptually. Every person that we work with is individual, so no two people are alike, but we do help put a good plan together. The next thing I want to talk about is taxes. So we did have some tax cuts back at the beginning of 2019, so I wanted to share with you, this is before the tax reform and then after the tax reform. So the main difference is the married filing jointly tax rates, the single tax rates out of households, those got tightened up a little bit. You can see here the highest in 2017 was 39.6. And if I click over to 2020, the highest is 37%. So we still have the same amount of tax brackets, but we've tightened up the tax amounts and lowered them a little bit. So you might be saving 1 to 2% on your federal income tax. And again, one thing that we recommend that everybody does is have your advisor look at your tax returns. The tax returns tells a lot about what's going on and what income is coming into your tax return, whether it's dividend income, earned income, real estate income, IRA income. It really allows your advisor to be able to really do tax forward planning. It's one of the things that we do for our clients all the time, and it's key for us to take a look at people's tax returns. What I have up on the screen now is long-term capital gains. There really wasn't a big shift in this at all. Pretty much if you have long-term capital gains, you're still at 15% capital gains tax, unless you're a high income earner. What we're finding, more people are just doing the standard deduction. Back in 2017, if you were single, your standard deduction was $6,350, pretty low, so you may have taken the opportunity to itemize. Standard deductions, married filing jointly, was $12,700, and people then were itemizing more as well if they could. Now the standard deductions have gone up. So in 2020, if you were a single filer, your standard deduction is $12,400, and if you're married filing jointly, your deduction is $24,800. So why that comes into play is because can you itemize or not? So I'm not going to get into a full tax return here on this webinar, but there are a couple of key points that we like to look at. This is the itemized deduction sheet. Medical and dental. If your expenses were 7% of your adjusted gross income, you were able to write off your medical and dental. Well, they upped that in 2019 up to 10%, which means if your income is high and you don't have, if you have a lot of medical expenses, it's going to take a lot to be able to write those off. The other thing that changed was the tax we pay on our income. It's uncapped, and even our real estate taxes. It used to be uncapped, now it's capped at $10,000. So a lot of people are seeing that they can't itemize like they used to, so they're doing this standard deduction because they have restrictions. Mortgage interest. It used to be capped at $1 million. If you had $1 million mortgage, you could write off the interest. They've dropped that down to $750,000 as the mortgage interest you can deduct. Charitable gifting, a little bit there. It's gone up to 60% of your adjusted gross income from the 50%. So without doing tax advice today, it's something that make sure that you're working either with a qualified CPA or a financial advisor that understands how to do tax forward planning so that you can pay as little bit of tax in the future. And that brings me to my next topic, which is how do you do that, right? So I want to look at tax history before we can talk about tax planning. If I look at back in time, and I go all the way back to 1914, the highest federal tax rate was 7%. And that was with a national debt of just under $3 billion. So 7% federally in 1914 with a deficit of just under $3 billion in our deficit. If I look and fast forward to 1944, the highest federal tax bracket with $201 billion in deficit was 94%. So could you imagine today, for every dollar you bring in, you got to pay 94% federal tax? That doesn't leave you a lot to keep in your pocket. So you got to be a pretty high income earner back at that time frame. But what that teaches us is that taxes were pretty high back then. And if we look at current, right now, if we look at our tax bracket ending in 2019, the highest federal tax bracket is 37%. However, our national debt, now I'm going to share with you a number, it's showing you 22 trillion, is actually now 24 trillion, and that's without even including the $2 trillion stimulus bill that the government is putting in place because of the coronavirus. So with this history, if you take a look at that red line, our national debt has gone up drastically, but yet we are still, some people say taxes are on sale. We still are in a fairly low tax bracket if we look at our history. So we help our clients try to be more tax-free or more tax efficient, not only today, but also if we look down the road in their future. So how do you become more tax efficient? There is a few ways. We put together something called the tax triangle just to kind of educate where money is today and how it's taxed. So the first piece of the tax triangle we look at is the tax deferred bucket. The tax deferred bucket is your IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457, your pension plans, your profit sharing. That is money that you've been accumulating. Your company's helped maybe accumulate it by doing some matches, but you've never paid tax on that. You make a contribution and you get the deduction off of your tax return the year you make that contribution. So for example, if you make $100,000 a year and you contribute $5,000 to one of those vehicles, it looks like on your federal tax return that you only made $95,000. So you're never paying tax on the money that's earned or contributed to that to any of these accounts. So that's your tax deferred bucket. You don't worry about too much. You fund it, you set it aside. I know some people lately this last month saying I'm not even opening or looking at my statements. The taxable bucket are things that you have maybe a little bit more control of. They're taxed the year you make a gain or make an interest. Stocks, bonds, savings accounts, mutual funds, CDs, etc. One thing I want to talk about is mutual funds. When you open a mutual fund or buying a mutual fund, you're giving that mutual fund manager authority to buy and sell stocks on your behalf inside that mutual fund, however they want to do that. That mutual fund is just owning stock. However, at the end of the year, you may see a loss overall in that mutual fund, but throughout the year, that manager could have bought and sold and made a profit or a gain for you, but you don't see it year end. But guess what? You still have to pay tax on whatever that mutual fund manager did, even though at the end of the year, you may see a loss of funds yourself or loss of money. So what I wanted to share with you here, just when we do our analysis that everybody gets the opportunity to take advantage of, is that mutual funds are not the most tax efficient because you do not have control. So there are reasons to own mutual funds, but again, let's make sure that it's as tax efficient as possible. The tax-free bucket is your Roth IRAs, HSA, which is the health savings account, municipal bonds, cash value life insurance. All of these have rules to them. They have contribution rules, they have distribution rules, they have accumulation rules. So there's also different rules how to contribute to all these different accounts. But these are the only places that you can go for tax-free. So if we're taking a look at our tax-deferred bucket and our taxable bucket, I want you to take a look at your statements and see how much you have in each of these categories. When we sit down with prospects, potential clients, we find they're very heavy in the tax-deferred bucket. And the reason why that's a problem is because you've never paid tax on that money. But guess what? Someday you will have to. And that age right now is 72. So you can defer it as long as you want. But then the IRS says at the age of 72, you have to start taking something called a required minimum distribution. You can defer it. The earliest you can take is, 59 and a half, and then you have to start taking it out at age 72. Now, remember with the COVID and the stimulus going on right now, that 2020 requirement distributions, if you're 70 and a half or up, you do not have to take them this year. Other than that, if you typically in a regular year, and you have to take your required minimum distribution. If you don't take it, there's a 50% penalty. So also when you die and you leave tax deferred accounts to your heirs, they have to pay all the tax on that. And I will get into that when we talk about retirement planning and distributions. So that's the deferred bucket. So if there's any opportunity that you have to start shifting some of these dollars to tax-free, so when you're in retirement, if taxes do go up, like we think they will, you want to have as much tax-free or tax-efficient investment income coming into your tax return so that you're not having to spend everything out and pay it to the government. So that's the tax triangle. I know that's a lot of information to cover, but when we work one-on-one with people, it's much easier because we're zeroing in on your personal situation and helping and guiding you that way. So we believe that you should be as well diversified in the tax triangle as you should be diversified in your investments. So challenge you to take a look at your statements and how diversified are you in the protected world and the risk world, and how diversified are you in the tax triangle. So that's the tax section. Next thing I want to talk about is retirement planning, insurance planning, and estate planning. These are the last topics here. They're a little bit lengthy, but we're going to get through them. Retirement planning. Retirement planning, the number one concern people face when they reach retirement is, did I save enough? Where's my income coming from? Am I going to outlive it? What's my plan? And you have to have a plan so that you know where the income's coming from in all cycles of the stock market. So let's go through something called sequence of returns risk. Sorry about that. Just clicked the wrong button there. Come on. Okay. Sequence of returns risk. If you haven't heard of it, this might be something you want to write down. Hopefully y'all have a pad of paper next to you. Sequence of returns. Let's give you a story here. It's the sequence that you, the returns of your investments get. So let's give you an example here. We've got John and Jane, age 60, and they've saved $1 million for their retirement, but they need to withdraw $50,000 a year, and we're factoring in 3.5% to keep up with inflation. That's to subsidize their other income that may be from a pension or Social Security, but that's what they need to take from their retirement account. Now, if we look at the math on that, that's a 5% withdrawal rate. And having that fully invested in the markets with the ups and downs of the markets, I can promise you they will run out of money if they live 20 or 30 years in retirement. It's just too hefty of a withdrawal rate. So let's see actually how that looks for this couple, depending on their sequence of returns. So let's say in scenario one, they start taking income, but the stock markets are in their favor. The first year they see a 27% rate of return, the second year they see a 9% rate of return, and the third year they see a 7% rate of return. The fourth year, a little bit of a hiccup, they see a negative 15%. Now we say, okay, let's take those exact same numbers in scenario two and we flip them. Instead of seeing the negative in the fourth year, we give them the negative in the first year of their retirement. So negative 15 the first year, a positive 7 in the second year, a positive 9 in the third year, and a positive 27 in the fourth year. Do you think there will be much of a change in how their portfolio will last just by flipping those numbers? Well, let's take a look. If you look at the green line here, this is showing you in the up market. So the very first scenario, with them taking the withdrawals, the stock market's doing well. If they're retired at age 60, they will be out of money. That's a 36 there at age 96. So I don't know about you, but I don't want any of my clients running out of money at 96, but that's not too bad. If we look at flipping this scenario and we have a down year the first year, they will be out of money. Let me flip for you here at 83. The difference here is a 13-year time gap where their portfolio will be exhausted of funds. So I don't have a crystal ball to know how long everyone's going to live. Show you that we do not have control of the sequence of returns in our portfolio if we're fully invested in the stock market. And it doesn't really matter so much the sequence of your returns when you're accumulating money and you're saving and you don't have to look at those statements. It's a big deal when you have to start drawing money out of those accounts, because not only are you taking the withdrawal, the portfolio is always also getting maybe a hit. So if you can go back to your memory in 2008, some people, because of what happened to their portfolios, people lost 37 to 50% of their 401ks, of what they thought was going to be there for their retirement, and they couldn't retire. So that's something that we always want to avoid. So if you're getting close to thinking about retirement, you want to mitigate the sequence of returns risk so that you can have the income that you need without running out of money. The other thing that I want you to think about too is that typically we do our planning 5 to 10 years before people are thinking about retiring, and already while they're in retirement. So I don't want you to think you're too young or too old or it's too early or it's too late. There's a big window up there of opportunity that you can still take advantage of to plan for your retirement. The next thing we want to look at is how do you diversify your allocations so that you have the right amount of income for your retirement. So assets, as we talked about, which are stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all those things are just assets. However, they all have a lot of risk to them, which I share with you already, the sequence of returns risk, which we just showed you, withdrawal rate risk. Remember, if you're going to withdraw 5% and your portfolio goes down 50%, your withdrawal rate risk could be over 10%, which means you will run out of money. So we have to mitigate that. Inflation risk, we know that the things that we consume, bread, gasoline, things like that, those always typically go up. Market exposure and volatility, you just have a bunch of assets. Longevity risk, that's the number 2 concern that people face in retirement, is people are living longer. So if you're living longer, you need income to come in longer, right? So in order to mitigate longevity risk, we want to have certainty and guaranteed income streams coming in. So they're there 96 and beyond. We don't have to run out of money at 83. We may not be out of life at 83. So when you set up your investments, you want to set them up for income allocation. That way, you don't have any sequence of returns risk. There's no withdrawal rate risk, no inflation risk, no market exposure and volatility, and longevity risk. It's just diversifying your investments so that some are set up for income, so they can avoid all those risks, and some are set up for growth. So we want to be truly diversified. So that's why we build actually written income plans for our clients. Every one of them has them in their custom binder that we provide for them. So yes, we can evolve and change things around, but everybody has a written income plan. So there's no surprises, especially on market times like this if the markets are going down. The next thing I want to talk about is the Secure Act and how it's affected retirement planning. This happened in the beginning of 2020. So January 1, 2020, things have changed. Highlights: required minimum distribution age is delayed to 72. Prior to January 2020, that required minimum distribution was age 70 and a half. If you were already taking RMDs, you have to still take them. But if you were not taking RMDs and you are just turning 70 and a half this year, you don't have to take them. You can now delay until age 72. Now you can take money out, but you don't have to start taking out until age 72. Probably one of the biggest changes in the Secure Act was there's no age limit on IRA contribution. So it used to be capped also at age 70. You can still contribute if you still have earned income. You have to have wages and earned income in order to contribute. And there's rules to doing that, and that's from how we guide our clients. The biggest thing though is the elimination of the lifetime stretch. What does that mean? If you are a non-spouse, meaning a child, and you inherit mom or dad's IRA, before January of 2020, you are allowed to stretch that IRA over your own lifetime, which could be 30, 40, 50 years, depending on the age you are when you inherit it. That has gone away, the elimination of lifetime stretch option. So if you inherit an IRA this year or after, you have to exhaust that IRA account by the 10th year. There are no longer required minimum distributions in the year that you receive that inherited IRA, but you have to empty that inherited IRA out in the 10th year. And the other thing too, a lot of insurance companies are not accepting inherited IRA applications anymore as well. So there's a lot of changes in inheriting IRAs as well. If you have one that you've inherited and you're taking required minimum distributions, keep on doing that. That is fine. It's for anybody that receives an IRA from the death of a mother, or father, or sister, or brother, or something other than a spouse. The law has changed, so you don't want to make a mistake on that. You want to make sure it gets set up appropriately. This is just a screenshot of the RMD table. Right now, if you're 72, this is the dividing factor that says calculate all of your IRA, your 401k, what's the total, divide it by 25.6. That will tell you what your required minimum distribution has to be for that age. And that factor gets smaller as you get older, so the more has to come out the older that you get. So that's the uniform table based on your life expectancy. Again, we don't ask our clients to memorize this, know this. We hold everybody's hand every year on what the required minimum distribution should be and where should we take it from. So, but those are some key effects with the Secure Act that happened in January of this year, 2020. Next thing I want to talk about is insurance planning, long-term care. I share with you my story in the beginning, how my father spent the last 10 months of his life in a nursing home. Long-term care, how do you pay for it? It's the number 2 concern that people have as we get older. How are we going to write that check out? How are we going to pay the bill? So one of the things that we do when we look at planning for that is we have to take a look at the investable assets that you have, and do we need to protect any of it, and do we need to empower any of it to pay for healthcare should that occur. There's a couple ways. I've got an example up here to just give you some stats. The average nursing home cost nationally is about $102,000 a year. The average cost in Illinois is $82,000 a year. I have a client whose husband just went into assisted living, not full-blown nursing, and it's costing $6,500 a month. So we're starting to draw money out of the accounts in order to write that check to that assisted living facility center. The sad part is 70% of us, if we make it to the age of 65, are going to need some sort of long-term care services. I know that's not a pleasant number, but all that really goes to show is that we have to have a plan for it. The average length of stay in a nursing home is about 3 years, up from about 2.95 a few years ago. So how do you pay for it? Well, there's a few ways. One way is you can go out and buy traditional long-term care insurance. There's several companies that still write it. You pay a monthly premium or an annual premium, and if you get sick and you can't be independent, the insurance company will pay a portion of the care, however much coverage you decide to buy. So that's traditional long-term care. It's been around for years and years and years, kind of going to the wayside because people are seeing rate increases with their policies, and they're also saying, well, gosh, you know, mom passed away and she never used it. We paid all those years into the insurance policy. Well, I say thankful she never needed it, because nobody wants to spend time in a nursing home getting taken care of. But yeah, that's a bummer that you never saw any benefit back to the family with that. So there are other alternatives. One, you can use a cashback life insurance policy. So this gives you an example. Let's say you had a $100,000 investment sitting on the sidelines just for the what ifs. You don't really need it, but it's just the in case money. If you could empower that $100,000, put it into a money back guaranteed life insurance chassis, how it works. And if any given day you said, you know what, I don't want the policy anymore, you get your money back. But day one, that $100,000 can turn into a $300,000 pool of benefits for long-term care. And if you never get sick and never need time in a nursing home or have home health care, it's just a $300,000 tax-free death benefit to your heirs. Now, don't quote me or hold me tight to these numbers, because these are age-driven and health-driven. So there's a little bit of underwriting that goes involved into it, but it's something to look at. If you're a little bit younger, you might see a better benefit. If you're a little bit older, you might see a lesser benefit. But don't forego thinking that, oh, I don't want to do that. Just know it's one of the options that's out there that you can take a look at to help protect your assets or empower them in case you have a long-term care or home health care health crisis. The other option is you can do nothing. So if you choose to do nothing, that just means you're choosing to self-pay. So you can either just say, okay, I saved $1 million, and if I get sick and it costs me $300,000 in a nursing home, so be it. You self-pay. What you want to also look at, if that's your decision or something that you're saying that's just my option that I'm going to choose, where is that money coming from? Is it coming from IRA money? Is it all taxable? Is it tax-free money? Is it taxable money? So you also have to say how much, where is that money coming from? Because that's going to make a difference on what you actually net in your pocket based on tax rates, correct? So if you choose to do nothing, let's take a look at the investments that you have and make sure that you can and your spouse can continue to survive the lifestyle they want if they have to spend down some of the assets to cover the sicker spouse. Or you can reduce the burden on yourself and relieve some of that to an insurance company. So those are really your options when it comes for planning for long-term care. I know there's not a lot, but it's really either self-pay or mitigate some of that risk using some of the insurance products that are around today. Estate planning. One thing I want to ask you real quick here is, what is your plan for your beneficiaries to manage your final expense? I asked this question, I've added this into my presentation lately because we find that although they have assets that they set aside, they've named their beneficiaries, and guess who the kids come to when mom or dad passes away? It's us. It's the financial advisor, because what? They need the money, right? So you may say, guess what? I've got everything in place. I've got life insurance, I've got money in the bank, I've got annuities, I've got investments, I even have a power of attorney, right? So you've got all those documents. But the problem is, all of these documents require a death certificate. This little picture over here is a death certificate. A death certificate takes 10 to 14 days to get, and then you have to do claims paperwork, meaning fill out a claims form, prove that you're the beneficiary, show the death certificate, and then the insurance company or the bank or the investment company has to do the processing, and that could take another 30 days. So by the time you actually get the funds to pay for mom or dad's funeral or your spouse's funeral, you've had to dip into money somewhere else, put it on a credit card. I don't know really what the options are. Otherwise, it's going to take a while to get reimbursed. So we now have partnered with a company that has something called a beneficiary liquidity plan, which means you're using the money you're already leaving to your beneficiaries, right? So you've already set the money aside. You already know that that's the money they're going to use. They won't need to come up with any additional funds. The death benefit grows tax deferred, but is paid within 24 to 48 hours upon death. No health questions. It issues up to age 99. Maximum allowable is $100,000 per person, and it's a simple 4-page app. So the typical policies that we see people write, a funeral costs maybe $10,000 to $20,000, depending on if you're going to get cremated or if you've already bought your lot or your plot or your drawer. So we sit down and we think, how do you want to leave? What's the legacy that you want to leave? Then we look at just shifting some money, and we just self-fund it with one deposit, and it grows and it's set aside. Therefore, no death certificate. The funds are paid out in 24 to 48 hours. You can use any funeral home you want, anywhere you want. And then any extras that doesn't go towards the funeral cost is tax-free to the beneficiaries listed, whether it's a daughter or a son or something like that. So that's a piece of estate planning that you all need to think about. How is your final expenses going to be managed? Because all the things over here in your current plan require death certificate and claims paperwork, which takes time. A simple solution, we have a product that can access the funds in 24 to 48 hours. That's one piece of estate planning. Now you're going to see a bunch of trusts pop up on your screen, all sorts of different trusts. So estate planning can become very complicated, or it can be very simple. It's really very individual, because I don't know enough about you. Until I get to know what do you need as far as a trust, we would either connect you with an attorney, help you out if you need to. You may not even need a trust, but there are so many different trusts. Now, just so you aren't mistaken, attorneys do trusts. We can be the overseer to say, okay, here's everything that you have. It looks like you may need to set up a special needs trust for your special needs granddaughter or child or something like that. Or maybe you need a charitable remainder trust to offset taxes in your real estate property. We can help be the overseer, but ultimately an attorney develops and designs the trusts. If you have an attorney, we can work closely with them. If you don't have an attorney, we have some sources that we can always refer you to. So as you can see, lots of trusts, lots of complications, or it can be very easy. In estate planning, I'm going to go back to that trust page. In estate planning, if I can give you any advice, the biggest thing that you want to make sure that you do is name beneficiaries on every single bank account, investment account, IRA account, 401k account, and make sure they're current. It's very easy to update. Too many times we have people come in with straggler accounts and they didn't name a beneficiary. I know it can get complicated if you don't have a spouse or kids, but you've got to care about somebody out there. Name somebody, because that avoids probate and things get passed on very simply. It's a beneficiary document. We have clients that we are sometimes changing their beneficiaries because life happens, someone may pass away. It's a service that we provide ongoingly, making sure that beneficiaries are always current and named appropriately to avoid probate. The next thing I want to share with you is a little bit more about Bussinger Financial Group. I'm hosting this webinar as far as our corporate philosophy. So back when my father got sick, again, it was 22 years ago, the way I decided to work is I wanted to get to know my client before I would ever decide how I could help them, because I didn't understand how you could help someone without getting to know them. So I became a fiduciary from the start, meaning I never worked for a big warehouse or a big insurance company, but I'm able to use their products or their investment tools being an independent. So I'm not held to any company saying you have to sell this product. We can go out to the world, in the investment platform, the risk world, or the protected world, with no bias to any company or any investment. We use the tool or the product or the investment that fits the client's needs. So that's how we started our company, and we will stay that way. So we are independent. Our overall planning is very comprehensive. We just don't sell products or investments. We do pretty much the whole comprehensive plan. If we need to bring in our CFP, we need to bring in our CPA, or use your CPA or an attorney, we will do that because we want to make sure your plan is comprehensive. Very customized, like I said earlier. No two clients have the exact same plan. The tools are out there, and we'll bring them in to make sure they fit what the client needs and wants. And we are very concierge based, just making sure that you get very personalized service. We have developed also a process when we decide if we want to take on a new client. So I'm going to walk you through our process. Meeting one is just to get to know you. Typically, we do that meeting one face-to-face in our office, which is in Barrington. But as you know, technology, we've had to become savvy in the world right now because we cannot see people face-to-face. But we have been very successful working every day via phone calls and Zoom meetings where we can go over anything just as if we were sitting at our conference room table. We just have to use technology to do that. So that would be meeting one, where you call us, email us, and I'll give you ways to do that at the end of this presentation, how to get a hold of us. Just get to know you, let us know what concerns you, and together that phone call typically takes about 45 minutes to an hour. And if we decide together that, yeah, there might be some areas that we could be of help to you, we would ask for some information. We're going to ask maybe to see your tax return. We're going to ask to collect some of your statements, whether your 401k or your IRA, so we can actually see what you currently have. Because we won't know how to advise you unless we know what you have. How are you diversified in your investments? How are you diversified in your tax triangle? Once we collect those statements, we run an analysis for you. In that analysis, our investment team, we use Morningstar, and we take a look at every holding that you have. We look at the risk, the fees, if there's income, expenses, things like that, and we will deliver that analysis to you. Now again, in meeting two, that's where I come in and I sit down with you one-on-one, and we go over that analysis together. That meeting takes about an hour, hour and a half. I'm okay with that. We're going to hold your hand, and we're going to show you what things that you have that are great, that we think are really good inside your portfolio. And we might also show you some areas that we may be able to help and maybe increase returns, reduce risk, whatever it is that we are looking to accomplish. Now, meeting two, we've been very successful doing those over Zoom meetings as well. We can do a share screen just like this and go through the analysis to avoid and keep with the social distancing that's in place right now through the end of the month. So that's how we can do meeting two. Meeting three, we will continue to talk and start implementing. We'll take care of everything there. If we have to open up new accounts. For our risk side, we use Fidelity as our custodian, and we use institutional money managers. And for the safe side, if we're going to use any insurance products, we'll guide you through that. And those electronic applications can always be done as well. And we could do things via email scans, DocuSign, things like that. So I don't want you to delay planning thinking that you can't see face-to-face, because a lot can be done with technology today. Meeting 4, we deliver a financial inventory binder. Inside that binder is all of your important accounts that you own, an income plan, if your trust is in there, your beneficiaries, all of that is in there. It's a custom binder that we create for you for any accounts that you have with us or with outside of us. We just ask you to bring that, deliver that binder to every review meeting that you have, so we can update it for you, and making sure we are continuing to offer you ongoing services. That's typically we see our clients, some are quarterly, some are annually. It really depends. It depends on the type and in-depth planning that we're doing. So some clients have us do all their planning. Some people just need 1 or 2 pieces done. So that is going to depend on how often we get to see each other and stuff. So, so that's, I'm not going to go through technology today. So what we're offering for you today is an opportunity for us to take a look at your accounts or any questions that you have. There's a few ways you can get in touch with us. If you have any questions on any of the content discussed, please call or email us directly. I know I saw a couple of chats pop up. I will go ahead and look at those, and if there's someone I can get back to when the seminar is over, we will reach out to you. But otherwise, email any question that you might have that you need further clarity on. You can email that to info@bussingerfg.com, or just give us a call at 224-655-2426. If you would like to schedule a consultation, which is that 1-hour phone call, you want to do that, you can call or email Nicole directly at our office. She will get you on the calendar to set up that time. And at this time, we can do days or evenings. So just when you talk to her, you guys will work out the availability on both of our ends and your end. So her email is nicole@bussingerfg.com, or you can call Nicole at 224-655-2426 to get you your consultation scheduled at all. So that is it for the seminar today, and thank you all for joining in. I hope you learned some stuff, and I know it was a lot of information, so don't hesitate to send any questions your way. We'll get back to them as promptly as possible. Thank you very much. Just say you don't want to. Okay, say